Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories of this hour. US officials say the military is preparing for weeks-long operations against Iran if President Donald Trump orders an attack. The reported planning comes as diplomatic efforts continue, raising the stakes for US-Iran talks. Taiwan's Foreign Minister Lin Chialung says China is the real threat to security and accuses Beijing of hypocrisy over UN principles. His comments come after China's top diplomat warned at the Munich Security Conference against efforts to separate Taiwan from China. Palestinian officials say at least 11 people were killed in Israeli airstrikes across northern and southern Gaza, including 4 in a displacement camp and 5 in Khan Yunis. Israel says it targeted Hamas fighters after alleged ceasefire violations as both sides accuse each other of breaching the October truce. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio begins a 2-day trip to Slovakia and Hungary to strengthen ties with their conservative governments. The State Department says he will discuss energy cooperation, NATO commitments, and other bilateral issues. This comes after the US Secretary of State tells the Munich Security Conference that America remains committed to Europe, even as it pushes to reshape the transatlantic alliance. His remarks come after months of strain, including President Donald Trump's tariff threats and previous criticism of European allies. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says Ottawa will not restore diplomatic ties with Iran unless there is a change of government. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference in Germany, she declines to say whether Canada would support a US military strike. Russia says a Ukrainian drone attack has damaged the Black Sea port of Tarman in the Krasnodar region. Officials report 2 people injured with an oil tank, warehouse and terminals hit at the facility. Ukrainian President Zelensky says he hopes next week's US-brokered talks in Geneva will be substantive, but adds Kiev is being asked too often to make concessions. He also accuses Moscow of delaying decisions by changing its lead negotiator ahead of the meeting. Those are our top headlines for this hour, but we start with China. Beijing is pushing back after a report claimed that US President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreed on measures to reduce Iran's oil exports to China. The Foreign Ministry responded, emphasizing that normal cooperation between countries should be respected under international law. According to the report, around 80% of Iran's oil exports go to China, and both the US and Israel believe cutting this trade could significantly increase pressure on Tehran's economy. Trump, using an executive order signed last week, could impose a 25% tariff on China for trading with Iran. This move is part of the ongoing US pressure campaign against Tehran, coinciding with continued negotiations between Washington and Tehran. Joining us now is Andrew K.P. Leung, an independent China strategist, joining us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us here on NewsX World. Of course, this is an ongoing situation in which the Trump administration is attempting to pressure Iran's trade partners away from buying Iran's exported goods, particularly its oil. Do you think Beijing sees this tariff threat as damaging, and will it cause Beijing to change its policy at all?
Well, of course, we're in the midst of an existential fight for hegemony and dominance between the United States and China on the one hand, and also this Iranian nuclear refining of the nuclear material to develop a nuclear bomb on the other. The latest move to squeeze Iran's export of oil to China is calculated to kill two birds with one stone, because it accounts for 80% of Iran's massive oil revenue, therefore weakening its ability to sustain any war. And on the other hand, it also affects China's energy security, energy supply. But to put it in perspective, though, Iran's supply of oil to China, while it accounts for 80% of Iran's total oil exports, it only accounts for 15% of China's total oil imports. So it's not an existential threat, it's still substantial. But looking back at the Iran theater, this is also typical of President Trump's fire and fury and maximalist kind of pressure to achieve his geopolitical or other aims. Let's not, well, what comes to mind, for example, was during his first term, the so-called lock and loaded fire and fury against North Korea. Sort of nuclear armed bombers and various other armaments were displayed. But at the end, nothing came of it. Now, as far as Iran is concerned, the pushback, of course, is real in the sense that what gives Iran the confidence to withstand this pressure is because Russia and China have been supplying Iran with high grade missiles. China, of course, is deploying its latest destroyer with 150 silos of short range and medium range hypersonic missiles, and also has supplied Iran with anti-aircraft missiles.
I just want to rephrase the question. How much does Beijing value Iran, either strategically or otherwise, as a partner, both in trading and in other areas as well?
Well, Iran is a key member of the so-called Iran, Russia, China triangle, highlighted in the doyen of American foreign policy, the late Brzezinski, in his seminal work called The Grand Chessboard. And on page 35 of that book, he already highlighted the risk to American dominance of this tripartite alliance between Russia, Iran, and China. And of course, Iran is a very important proxy to exert China's influence in the Middle East, dominated by the military dominance of Israel, along with the United States. But that's why China has brokered a deal, historic deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and then trying to stabilize the kind of dynamics. But now the latest Iran move, of course, it is a direct challenge to this tripartite relationship. And I think that Beijing is not going to give up on that very easily.
Okay. Andrew, do stay with us as we turn over to our next story. China has confirmed that starting February the 17th of this year, citizens from Canada and the United Kingdom will be able to visit the country visa-free. This new policy allows ordinary passport holders from both nations to stay in China for up to 30 days for business, tourism, family visits, or transit. The move aims to boost tourism and strengthen people-to-people exchanges. Furthermore, the visa exemption will be in place until December the 31st, 2026. This policy is part of China's broader diplomatic efforts to foster closer ties with these nations. Regardless of the growing geopolitical tensions, China continues to engage in initiatives that enhance international cooperation and promote mutual understanding. Andrew, of course, this comes after visits from both Prime Minister Mark Carney and Prime Minister Keir Starmer to China, which have occurred this year. How big of a development is this going to be in people-to-people ties?
Well, there's nothing new. These visa-free concession coming as it has with China relaxing visa restrictions in a similar fashion to dozens of Western countries, including the Nordic states and France, Germany, Switzerland, and various others over the past couple of months already. Ahead of the Starmer and Canadian concession. This is because there is a great deal of misunderstanding about what China is, and people still think that it's a highly repressive country, and then it is an evil empire. So China's opened up the country to let citizens in all the Western countries to have a look. Of course, China is no paradise. Of course, there is China its own rules and regulations. Of course, there's much less freedom. But is that the kind of evil empire it's painted out to be? So this latest visa relaxation concessions is a calculated move to portray China as it's just like in any other country, albeit of a different ideology, and it's growing its economy and it's growing its influence in the world like other countries. So I think that this is the latest move must be read not only in relation to Canada and the UK, but in the overall China strategy to let the rest of the world to see what China really is.
Andrew KP Leung, thank you so much for joining us here on the broadcast. We now turn to the Indian subcontinent for some breaking news coming in. Om Birla, the Speaker of India's Lok Sabha, will represent the Government of India at the swearing-in ceremony of Bangladesh's newly elected government, led by Tariq Rahman, the chairman of the Bangladesh National Party. The ceremony is scheduled to take place in Dhaka on February the 17th, 2026. Separately, according to Humayun Kabir, an advisor to Tariq Rahman, Bangladesh now hopes for a fresh start in its diplomatic ties. Kabir emphasized that it is now up to New Delhi to recognize this changed reality and work towards fostering a relationship based on mutual benefit. Next, we turn to Europe. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas says EU countries are not ready to give Ukraine a concrete date for membership, speaking on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. Kallas has said her feeling is that while there is strong political support for Ukraine, member states remain cautious about committing to a clear timeline for accession. Ukraine has been pushing for faster EU integration as it continues to fight Russia's invasion and seek long-term security guarantees from the West. EU leaders maintain that Ukraine's future lies with the bloc, but say key reforms must be completed before any membership date can be set. We stay in Munich for our next story at the Security Conference, where Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen discussed Arctic security and the ongoing pressure on Greenland. When asked if US President Donald Trump still wishes to acquire the island, Frederiksen stated that that desire remains, calling the pressure on Greenland unacceptable. She emphasized that Greenland's people have never felt threatened before and that such pressure is not tolerable. Nielsen echoed these concerns, highlighting the gravity of the situation and the potential global implications of a NATO country threatening an ally. He pointed out that the first time Greenland felt unsafe was when discussions about acquisition surfaced. Both leaders assured that they are working together to find a solution, but stressed that they are clear red lines that will not be crossed. Let's take a listen into the comments.
Fortunately, I think the desire is the same. It's something we, of course, talk a lot about. And I would also